Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. This is Alex South, and I'm in my studio in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I am laughing to myself and talking to myself and talking to you at the same time, which is kind of the crazy nature of these videos and social media and our kind of digital presentation of self. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And it's probably why, or part of the reason why, I haven't been publishing videos or posting on Instagram or whatnot. But I'm really trying to get back out there, as they say. But I want to do it in a different way. And I want to talk about some different stuff. So I wanted to start by talking about something I received in the mail a number of years ago. I don't remember when, but it was this book. And it was titled, Alex Oath, I Made You a Book. And inside they're all found pictures, kind of newspaper pictures, that sort of thing. And this book, I keep it on my shelf because it makes my ego feel good, right? So, and I often show it to interns or people in the library and talking about like, well, if you want to get someone's attention, you send them a physical object with their name on it like this, and it makes an impression. So, yes, I have an ego, and yes, that worked. More recently, I received this book. And this is not a published book. This is a handmade masking tape bound book. And at the time, I was going through some stuff and I didn't really look at it, to be honest, for a little while. And then finally, I cracked it open and okay, it says Stories of a Photographer, compiled by Evan Patrick Maloney. Pictures posted by Alex South. Okay. And it says, on September 30th, 2019, I sent Alex South this Instagram DM. It says, do you think of Instagram stories as art? Would you consider them part of your body of work? Questions I've been having recently. And I responded with this emoji. I'm not proud of this response. It's pretty empty, but I was probably feeling overwhelmed by social media, as I often do. So the book consists of my Instagram stories from that period of time. I mean, it's really crazy to look at it because like I barely remember posting a lot of this stuff. And it's like my life. Here I am, like making a collage of myself. And oh, there's a food picture. Here's a picture of Jason Polin and a New York Times article about him dying. So really tragic. The pictures of my dog. What else we got here? Oh, that Snowman series. There was my cat. There's some pictures here. My daughter and my wife. This great picture of Allen Ginsberg. Funny, I've just been looking at that again, this photograph with this writing on it. And so for me, it's a bit of a trip down memory lane, but kind of weird thing, right? Weird book. So, again, like, I'm just going to be candid here for a second. This social presentation of self, it's like, it spins in on itself. And I think we all know this feeling. Well, maybe we don't all, but some of us know this feeling of this kind of inward spiral, and it's like neuroses made digitally visible. And I've done this, God, for so long now. And so when I saw this book, and I had not looked at it for a period of time, and then I saw it was my Instagram stories, and then I continued not looking at it for a period of time. I was like, I threw it down, and I was just like, ugh, like I don't want to look at that. Somehow seeing the Instagram stories made physical was just embarrassing to me or something. And similarly, that first book that I showed is embarrassing. I don't actually sit around looking at it very often. I just note how it satisfies something in my ego. And incidentally, when I first got on Instagram, which was something I didn't want to do. I was being asked by Kathy Ryan at the New York Times if I'd post to Instagram and for a story. And I was like, I just don't want to join this platform. And I hadn't been on Facebook before that. And then eventually I started, and what I played with was originally I played with the like function on Instagram itself, because I was just fascinated by the way in which these little pellets of dopamine fueled me. I could feel it. And then eventually I was experimenting. I tried to construct the most liked picture, and I did it. I fabricated a photograph that would be the most liked, and it worked. And I was sort of gaming the system. And then over time, man, it became just more and more empty. And my neuroses about it continued on as well. YouTube was sort of a different thing, but here I am alone talking to you, and that's very strange. And one of the things that I've thought about a lot is because people seem to like the videos that I've made in the past. We'll see about this one. See, there it is. There's the neuroses. But they've liked these videos, but I've tried to do this teaching in my house. I'm bringing people to live in my house to teach them. And I often think, damn it, I'm potentially a better teacher alone in this room talking to myself than I am with people living in my house. Is that possible? It seems to be. I don't know. I mean, I've had amazing experiences with those people, but I don't know. I'm neurotic. Anyway, this book created more neuroses, and I set it aside again, and I did not read the essay in the back. Okay. And that essay starts right here, The Changing Storyscape. And what Evan talks about is how at this moment in Instagram's history, this is an amazingly well-written essay, by the way. So I was kind of blown away, this handmade book. And then it has this incredible essay in it. And in the essay, Evan talks about how he perceived, as many of us did, the Instagram story as a representation of something more authentic. And he was kind of fascinated by that. And then he talks about at the end of the essay about how that peeled away over time, and it changed his thoughts. And he writes, I always viewed stories as a way to bring that human element to social media, a place to be more loose and sensitive and free than in the stricter confines of actual posts. I think many others share this same thought. And we've come to understand stories as maintaining a level of intimacy not otherwise found on Instagram. But what I learned during this project is that there is only ever the sense of intimacy, never the real thing. I've looked at these 240 images more than anyone else, maybe more than Soth himself, and they still tell me so little about the man who posted them. I know he has a white poodle-looking dog, but it would be hard for me to say Soth is a dog person or say anything else about him as a real human with a real personality. While the stories depict otherwise private scenes and feelings, they reveal quite little without the context real human interaction leads to truly knowing someone. Stories, through no fault of us that use them, create a guise of intimacy and knowledge that breaks down as soon as you look at the pictures for more than a few seconds. He ends the story with this amazing, a really amazing insight into this sort of faux digital intimacy, and it really touched a nerve for me. And once I finally read that thing, it was arrow straight to the heart. Now, incidentally, Evan, in his note to me here, he told me that this was a project that he'd started, and then he abandoned it, and did other stuff and whatnot. And he was in the note. He talked about having graduated from college in Arizona, and at the time I was going to Arizona, and so I reached out to him and said, "Hey, it'd be great to meet in person." And then I realized that he'd actually moved away from Arizona, and that we weren't able to meet. And so he and I started emailing each other. And I have to say, these emails, well, I don't know, it'd be interesting for Evan to say whether or not he knows me better. I mean, we've never met in real life, but after months of correspondence, does he have a sense of who I am? I don't know. You'd have to ask him. Do I have a sense of who he is? I think I do. But it's been a really special exchange. Anyway, what this brings to mind is Frank O'Hara, the poet, and his sort of tongue-in-cheek manifesto entitled Personism. And his idea was that you could create a form of poetry that is written just for another person, but it's not the thing that you would say on the telephone. It's crafted. He describes it this way here. He says, to give you a vague idea, one of its minimal aspects is to address itself to one person other than the poet himself, thus evoking overtones of love without destroying love's life-giving vulgarity. He says it puts the poem squarely between the poet and the person. It's at last between two people rather than two pages. I love that, and this idea of making something just for another person. And it brought to mind a bunch of different things. One of them was this recent book by Jason Polin called The Post Office. And Polin, who I mentioned earlier, passed away, but they recently published this book of his artwork that he sent to various people all over the world. And I was lucky enough to correspond with Jason and get things like this. And this to me really explains kind of the power of personism. I mean, it's the simplest line drawing of me walking down the street with my two kids. But wow, is it meaningful to me? And the power of that, and the power of this physical object right here, is really something. Incidentally, this was my contribution for the book. Jason sent me this giant hand in the mail through the post office, and it's currently housed in my garage. I don't know what to do with it, but yeah, mail art is a great example of the power of that kind of direct communication. And of course, what it also makes me think about are letters and physical letters. So in preparing for this, I found my first letter home from college, and it's, well, here I go, first letter, and this paper. Look at this. its physicality just carries another meaning. And then here I say, I know you're wondering how things are going socially. To answer as simply as possible, let me say that they are getting better, but I feel that it isn't so important right now. I feel like I can be content with my situation for a while. Wow, that letter home from college also packs a punch for me now. And it's interesting because I have two kids in college, and we communicate through text messaging or phone calls sometimes. Those are the more like formal versions. And it's wonderful. And it's like, I didn't have the ability for all that communication back then. But on the flip side, like I looked at other letters where I was writing for a page about some philosophical idea I'd discovered in college, that kind of thing. And that kind of intensity of engagement within this form is possible. Is it the revealing of a true self? I don't know, but I think it's an element of a self. Another thing it brought to mind was my collaboration with C. Fausto Cabrera. So you might know this book, The Parameters of Our Cage, and it's comprised of a correspondence between C. Fausto Cabrera, who was incarcerated at the time, and these are letters from back then. And these letters, they're unbelievable. They're like pages and pages of his thoughts to me. And what's kind of interesting about this as a document for me is that as Chris got out of prison a couple of years ago, and so now we meet in person and we have a good relationship and we talk about stuff, but it's different because there was this space and time to put a lot of thought into what we were going to say to each other. And some of those things we said were not for public consumption. They're left out of the book. And I think we really got to know each other, I think, authentically. And the fact that then I could publish this and that lots of people have found value in it, to me sort of speaks to that idea of personism and its creative potential. Another example of that where I've played with the idea of personism is with these two books here. Walking Woodlawn Triangle with Leonard, and My Name is Cherish. I made this book with Alex South. My favorite part was climbing the tree. So these two books are in an edition of two. I own one copy, and the other person with whom I collaborated owns one copy. So Leonard, so this says text recorded during walks with Leonard Goering, a resident of the Woodlawn Triangle neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, May 2015. And so there's Leonard here. These are pictures of just Leonard and I walking and our exchanges in text. He's talking about Heidegger. He taught philosophy. Leonard has since passed away as well. And then the other book with Cherish, this is Cherish. And the words are all hers. This is my great-grandpa. When I first got my plant and I was at school, he used to water it for me and make sure nobody did anything to it. And when I was home, he'd remind me to water my plant. He's a great-grandfather. So in her home, her mom had this picture of the Obamas. It says their house is amazing. They have probably 7 or 8 rooms. One room is the playroom. Another is the quiet room. The president makes sure that everybody is safe. Wow, this book is also falling apart. There's her mom in this picture. And at the end of this, we had an exhibition of these prints. There she is. And both of these books, I mean, they're really special to me. They sit on my shelf, these one-of-a-kind things, and they kind of just like glow energy. Does Cherish know me? Did Leonard know me? It doesn't really matter. We made something beautiful out of this exchange. And I just love the power of that. And I can't help but contrast it with social media. So the power of social media, you give tiny little pellets of material you put out there, and it can accrue and have value, but it's, first of all, the lack of having something tactile really changes it. So another thing that I came across when preparing for this were some letters I received from other photographers. So here's one from Robert Adams. He signs it Bob. I just can't call him Bob to this day. I've never met him. We've corresponded over the years. This was the first letter that he sent to me in 2003 after he got a hold of my book dummy for Sleeping by the Mississippi. And really nice. A little snippet of a poem. The thing I always think about with this letter is that it ends, I especially like some of the landscapes, which to me, like I read as, he hates the portraits. But that's a window into a sick mind right there. Another one was this from Sally Mann, and it's a nice note also in that era of the book dummy, and I sent her a copy, and she had nice things to say about it, written on the back of this print. And this is another one of these kind of like supercharged objects that I have. It just, even though what was written was not anything particularly deep, the fact that it's this physical object, that we had this exchange, really meant something. And this brings me to this new project that I'm doing, and it's an attempt to kind of expand on this thinking and this dialogue that I've had with Evan and thinking about all these letters and personism, is that I've decided that 2026 is for me going to be the year of the letter. And not to say I'm not going to use email or I'm not going to use social media, but I really want to invest a lot of energy into letters. And so what I've been doing is experimenting with a form to do this, and I'll show you some examples. So this is a test letter that I wrote to my intern Bryn, and it's written on the back of a photograph. The photograph is one that it comes up in our dialogue because we were talking about raves. She was talking about going to raves and dancing and so forth, and the other two were written to Lester B. Morrison, my pseudonym. And in this letter, I talked about Minor White, and this is Minor White's house in Minneapolis. And because I've been reading Minor White's diaries and his letters, which are incredible. And it's also part of the reason I'm interested in the form of the letter. It's actually interesting, this quote here, because I write to Lester about Minor White, and then I quote this. Well, it says, "I've decided to make 2026 the year of letters, and you are at the top of my pen pal list. Another person I want to correspond with is Minor White. He died 50 years ago, but I've been reading his diaries and letters, and he feels alive to me. In 1948, he wrote this to a former student. Several years ago, I said to myself, or wrote on a piece of paper somewhere, that camera could lead a person into the world. Since then, I've used the camera to explore the inner man to greater and greater depths. From your comment and from others, I'm extremely aware of the need to turn the lens outward. Whether I can or not remains to be seen. It has been somewhat of a surprise and disappointment to me to discover that a quiet desperation is all of my inner life. It is the creative urge and the destructive one together." I mean, what I love about Minor White is the way he's this spiritual person, and really drawn towards that. But he's also, like, in his diaries and his letters, there's a grounding and a real honesty that I admire. So I also, and this is the picture on the back of that letter to Lester B. Morrison, and then finally I wrote a letter to Minor White himself, and this is the object. Oops, I got a little piece of tape on there. I mean, these are physical objects, and this is the letter I wrote to him. And I mean, that's the thing, is that, like, I can write a letter to Minor White because I'm partially writing to myself, but I was also legitimately writing to him. That's the thing about Personism, is that it's kind of inward and outward simultaneously, which is actually how I think of my art making generally. Like, that's the spirit of it. But going forward, thinking about doing this, thinking about addressing one person and making something for them, just has a lot of appeal at this time of so much noise and distraction and the social media onslaught. So that's what I'm up to. Now, I am looking for pen pals, and I'm going to do this different ways. It's a little complicated, still sorting out all the details on that, but all that information, when I finish that, and by the time I post this video, will be at littlebrownmushroom.com. So if you're interested in corresponding with me, that's a place to get more information. So thank you for watching this video and for listening to me talk to myself, talking to you. Oh, wait a second. There's one last thing I wanted to share, because I was a little hard on myself about my teaching before, and I wanted to share something really beautiful that happened. So 10-ish years ago, 9-10 years ago, I did this thing called the Winnebago Workshop, which was this workshop where we traveled cross country with teenagers. This is a little snapshot from that event. Let me see if I can get this closer here. Here's a picture of us on the road, and right here is the writer John Green, who incidentally just did this amazing interview with the New York Times, in which he talks about his digital persona versus his real persona. And anyway, right below me there, this blonde fella named Cooper, and Cooper and I have been working together in some capacity for a decade. He's joined me on trips. I photographed him a bunch, and he shows me his work. He just showed me his new work yesterday. But a while back, he sent me this, which is it's basically a painting and a letter combined, and it's just like so beautiful. And his words in the letter, which I'm not going to share with you, but which are so touching and so meaningful. And really, like, this thing is the ultimate example of personism. And so, I don't know. I think we should all read that manifesto and fight together for personism. Let's make this a real movement. Okay, with that, I will end. Thank you.